A game's first boss is usually nothing special. However, there are some times where the first boss is actually quite difficult. Now let me tell you something. It can be the first boss or the first mini-boss. Also, since this is a list about first bosses, some of them are not necessarily hard, just harder than most first bosses. Let's start the show.
I see you have made it this far.
If you remember the first boss of the original Donkey Kong Country, you remember that Very Gnawty wasn't exactly the hardest boss around. So, with the release of Donkey Kong Country 2, they replaced it with Crow, which is pretty tough. Well, for a first boss anyways. Instead of jumping on him, which you're used to, your goal is to pick up the eggs from the ground and throw them at him. Doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, guess what? Sometimes he can rain eggs down from his nest. Piranha in Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a very easy boss. If you're not looking to get his trophy, when you're trying to get his trophy, he actually proves to be somewhat difficult. The goal is not to defeat him, but rather to get his health low enough to throw a trophy stand at him. But trophy stands appear rarely. To make them appear more common, raise the difficulty. Though he's still very easy to kill, even on intense mode, trophyifying him is still difficult. Especially if he hits you when you're trying to throw the trophy stand at him, because you might drop the trophy stand. And it's also more annoying if it falls down the hole.
This is my prison. I make the rules. You boys are never getting out of here.
For one thing, Walker is in the first level, and you haven't had much experience with bosses in this game yet. He has this attack where he stomps to send shockwaves across the ground, which you can easily jump over, but you can only be in control of one character unless you have friends with you playing. If you don't, they're computerized, and they won't even jump when the shockwaves come. You think that's bad enough? Your characters all share lives, meaning that even if you take no damage, it's still possible to lose. Plus, he also has this ray gun that he can use to paralyze you. Sometimes he'll leave the screen and have his ghostly guards do the work for him, so you'll have to do some hard work. When you get the phase shift ability, you'll be able to get some stuff with ease, but before you have it, he's much harder. Valis may be easy nowadays, but he's on the list because he's pretty difficult when you first face him. You face him like 10 minutes after the game started, and the only enemies in the game are the Colossi themselves. Yep, that's right. This is the first foe you face in the entire game, and you don't even get a tutorial on how to fight enemies. To beat him, climb him starting with the back of his legs, then stab the bleeding part of him to make him fall so you climb up on his back, and try to reach his head. But remember, you have a grip meter in this game, so you can't grab onto him for too long or you'll fall off. It's a good thing there are resting spots on him. Ghirahim is one tough boss, but for all the wrong reasons. His motion controls will really hinder you. You have to attack him on the opposite end of where his finger is pointing or else he'll grab your blade, which is really irritating because the motion controls keep taking the wrong commands. And if he grabs your blade, you have to move your arm back really hard or else he'll damage you. He'll also attempt to shoot bullets at you that you need to slash in a certain direction to stop them, but the motion controls will make avoiding them difficult as well. If you saw the movie Tarzan, you'd probably remember how dangerous Sabor is. In the game, she is no exception. To kill this boss, you are armed with a spear. The problem? The weight of it will make you move slower and have less precise jumping, so you have to be more careful. She has two attacks, the dash attack and the jump attack. The dash attack is easy to avoid, as long as you don't accidentally jump into some of those birds. But the jump attack is very unpredictable. Even if you defeat her, it's not enough. You have to beat her a few times to kill her, and go through part of the level each time you beat her once, which is awesome, but can be pretty difficult. I bet you're probably wondering right now, how can a first boss be that hard? Well, how about the fact that you don't face her until the 6th level, and believe me when I say the levels are pretty long. Not crazy long, but still pretty long. F-Zero GX is one heck of an awesome game, and a hard one at that. The story mode's difficulty is absolute murder! Which brings us Samurai Goroh. Oh man, Samurai Goroh is a tough opponent. As you'd expect in an F-Zero game, you have to beat him in a race to the finish line. However, it's harder than it sounds. One thing, the right side of the course has no guardrails, and plus there are boulders tumbling down from the mountain that'll damage you. And they never seem to hit him. And the icing on the cake, there are no healing areas. So because your boosts cost health, you'll need to use them very wisely. In the original Metroid, Kraid is known for being surprisingly difficult. He throws many claws at you as well as the spikes on his back. You can freeze the spikes with the ice beam, but only when they're on his back and not when you're shooting them. Rock Crunch from Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. This boss is surprisingly unique, but man is it hard. Crunch is inside a giant orange boulder. You have to hit these boulders to turn them blue, but you have to hit all the ones on the screen so that Aku Aku rains them down on him. If Crunch hits a blue one, it turns black. If he hits a black one, it turns orange for a short period of time. And if you hit him or an orange boulder, you'll take damage. And not only that, but for a few seconds, any boulder you hit will have the same effect as if Crunch were to hit them. The only thing that keeps him from being higher is that you actually have a health meter, unlike some other bosses in the game, but even then, he still manages to be really tough. So, yeah, you all know what I'm gonna do now. Number 10, Crow. Number 9, Piranha. Only if you're getting his trophy. Number 8, Walker. Number 7, Valis. Number 6, Ghirahim. Number 5, Sabor. Number 4, Samurai Goroh. Number 3, Kraid. Number 2, Rock Crunch. What first boss could possibly be harder than Rock Crunch? This boss, believe it or not, actually comes from Kirby. You know, the franchise that's known for having ridiculously easy first bosses, especially since Wispy Woods is the first boss most of the time. However, there are also a few Kirby games that don't have Wispy as the first boss. For example, no, not that one! I'm talking about a boss that's nothing like Wispy. The hardest first boss I've ever faced is Dyna Blade from Kirby's Air Ride. To beat her, you have to hit her in the head 3 times. Sounds simple, right? Well, try this on for size. Because her head is in midair, you can only hit her by gliding over to her from a building, which takes quite a bit of time. And try not to accidentally hit her wing or you'll take damage. And what's worse is that she flies away after some time. Thankfully, she'll fly back a few seconds later, but not for long. And the game has the time set carefully so that if you miss once, you might as well automatically lose. Worst of all, she only appears in stage events. Is that bad? Yes, it is. Because even if you have the city trial set to 7 minutes, stage events only seem to happen like once per trial, and there are dozens of different stage events. You can't specifically set it so that Dyna Blade is the only event that appears out of random. So you'll have to keep doing city trial after city trial after city trial, waiting all day for Dyna Blade to appear. And if you think you can go to free run mode to make stage effects happen more often, you thought wrong, because in free run mode, stage effects do not happen. I am Meta527 II, and Dyna Blade is by far the hardest first boss in gaming history.
It's Godzilla!